give you a high-level overview of the implementation and rollout of Site Manager at University College Dublin. Just a quick run through the areas I'm going to cover then. I'm just going to give you some background on UCD just to put the whole thing in some context. I'm going to cover governance and communications, which are really two critical areas of the project. I'm going to cover the actual rollout model that we followed and the breakdown of responsibility between ourselves and IT services and the local college or school. Some related projects then just that run alongside CMS and some systems that we've integrated, just go through those very quickly. Tips and hints so you can hopefully then learn from some of our experiences, and if you have time at the end, I think probably take questions right at the very end of the whole lot. Okay, very quickly then, just the UCD environment. So I'm sorry, no picture. We're just down the road here out in Clonskee. We have 5 colleges in University College Dublin and 35 schools, and that's down from what was 11 faculties and 80 departments. A number of years ago, we did a major restructuring in the university, much like Jonathan was talking about. So we kind of like to consider ourselves at the vanguard of public sector reform, I suppose, at this stage. We have 23,000 students and 3,000 staff. The number of students is going up and the number of staff is going down, unfortunately, so it's good on one side, not so good on the other. We have 30 admin offices, 75 research related, so that'll be research centres, research institutes, research groups. In the first phase of the project, we targeted 140 websites, and we tried to include all the core official websites in that 140. And that's out of approximately 200 active websites on the main university server at any given time. That includes clubs and societies and so on. So we're not under any pressure to get all of those sites over, but certainly the first 140 is what we targeted. And that was pretty much a guesstimate at the time, a couple of years ago when we set out down this road. And it proved to be reasonably accurate. It was about 200 at one stage, but I tried to roll them back from that because I just figured there's no way we're going to do that in the time scale. Our own environment is all Dreamweaver, much like in Loughborough. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the problems of a big Dreamweaver implementation like that. We had no real CMSs as such around the university, a couple of local instances of some open source systems, but pretty much we're a greenfield site. So just the project status at the moment then, just where we're at. We have some stats. We have 109 sites now, 110 actually I think as of the last couple of days. These slides are now officially out of date. 110 sites integrated, fully integrated and live within the CMS. That translates into about 65,000 pieces of content. We have 33 contributors. Most of our sites are authored by 3 to 4 users. So we set most of them up as moderators. Only a few sites are operating any substantial workflows. So we've 317 moderators, 34 power users, and just a handful of administrators then. We're currently on Site Manager 5.4. We're very soon, hopefully, to jump to 6.2, which really is just a bridge for us to get to 7. We'll hear an awful lot about 7 over the next couple of days, but we really like the user interfaces and all the added benefits, so we want to get that available to the community, our community, as soon as possible. Okay, just to break down those sites that are live by category, we have a good broad range of sites integrated from across the university. So just very quickly, 44 college school sites, 5 graduate school, 25 administrative sites, and 31 research related, and 4 miscellaneous don't seem to get a title for some reason. Interestingly, the best uptake of CMS has been in the non-technical areas. For example, our College of Arts and Celtic Studies, we had all their schools integrated very early on in the process, whereas some of the more technical areas, like engineering, have been quite slow to adopt that. So maybe we come back to that at the end. I think the more technical areas kind of used to doing their own thing, they use their own tools, and there's a danger that it's seen as a bit more of an imposition on them. So it might be something to come back to later. You'll be very glad to hear I'm not going to go through every piece of this. But this is a work breakdown structure of the project, and it's a great way to present the overall scope of the project on one chart or one diagram. It's also a great way to kind of highlight the level and scale of work that's involved in a project like this, particularly if you're talking to important stakeholders at the outset, at the start of the project. I mean, some of the people I was talking about at the start of the project who remain nameless, non-technical areas, not in IT services and that, we're kind of saying, well, the CMS, can we not get this set up and get it all rolled out in a couple of weeks? Like, it's not, you know. So something like this would have been very, very useful. Just very quickly, the branches across the top represent the major work strands of the project, then broken down in turn into kind of discrete areas of work packages, and then down into actual tasks for the project as well. So I have to confess, I didn't have this at the start. I did this as part of a course I did after the fact. It's a bit like one I didn't have prepared earlier, I suppose. So just very quickly, I won't go through them all, but just we started off with the tender procedure. It started a full EU tender. We did a pilot phase then with 4 sites. Then all the work that's involved in setting up a production environment. Our initial rollout, we recruited 2 members to the team. Give a wave there, Brian down the back. And Daniel, where's Daniel gone? Daniel's not in the room, is he? There he is down beside him. Anyway, very quickly, and then just all the work involved in setting up your initial rollout, setting up the initial sites and everything that's involved in that. And then communications and governance at the end. I have some handouts, maybe you don't want to take those away. I have a more elaborate version of that. I had to take a couple of sections off because it didn't have room on the screen. So feel free to hand those around or come up and pick one up afterwards if you want. The 2 areas I'm going to deal with now are, for the rest of the talk, are the actual rollout and communications and governance as well. I'll take governance as the first one. At the very start of the project, before we went to tender, we set up a steering group with an independent chairperson. The main drivers for the steering group were ourselves and IT services, and then the communications office. The communications office from the perspective of content design policies and so on. We also included stakeholders from the outset as well, so we represented some research administration and our colleges and schools. So we had about 16 people on the steering group at the start. At each stage of the project, we went back to the steering group. So at each stage of the tender, we went back. Before we went to the pilot, we went back to them, and then we went into production. So at each stage, at the early stages, we were meeting every 3 weeks or so, every 3 to 4 weeks. And the steering group is still up and going, but it's broadened that now to every 3 or 4 months we meet. And the great thing about an independent steering group is that it's not perceived as myself or IT services making the decisions, and some of them can be, as you're all well familiar with, can be controversial or perceived as controversial across the university. So having a steering group is a great way. Like this is, it's formally approved. We've had plenty of stakeholders involved in it, and I was going to say that's the way it is, but I wouldn't say it in those words. In terms of communications, we did a joint lecture tour. Once we went into production, we did a joint lecture tour with communications office around the university. So we went out to colleges and schools and told them about the benefits of CMS that was available and how they can adopt it and so on. And we tried to include communications at all stages as well, because obviously from the point of view of content and policy and design, we wanted to emphasize the importance of that. We also set up a dedicated section of our website. We made support materials available to that. We also have an active news section on that, kind of highlighting the latest project status reports, any high-level or important kind of high-profile sites that we'd integrated. We did a promotional brochure, which I have some samples here. The samples over there, if anybody wants to have a look at those as well. So we put a lot of effort into promoting the system to the community once we got into production. Then we did call-out and one-to-one sessions, so we would go out and discuss the particular requirements of a college and school. We used our pilot participants very much as well once the pilot was completed. So we used them as reference sites. We took their feedback and codes and published those, and tried to promote it as much by word of mouth, which is always a great way to promote anything. In terms of branding and look and feel, we obviously included that in the lecture tour. And just to briefly show you, give you a look at the kind of policies we have in that area. This is a typical college or school template. As you can see from the happy, healthy cows there on the homepage, it's a veterinary medicine website. The main areas of this that we would kind of consider sacrosanct are the banner across the top and the left-hand navigation. The main body, this is a typical one, but you do get a lot of requests for tweaking and customization of this, and certainly the underlying pages, we get a lot of requests for customizing those. And by and large, we've kind of complied with that. But obviously, the more customization you do, the more new templates need to build, and you kind of lose the benefit of the economies of scale of keeping everything standardized. And there certainly is economy of scales to be had in keeping everything standardized. This is an example of kind of how extreme in terms of this is a, it's effectively a completely different website. It broadly follows the same design parameters, but it's all the templates are different, all the styles are different. Each section is almost like a new website. So I'm sure Brian down the back there will testify. There's probably 4 to 5 times the amount of work integrating this as the previous one, where we had already done a lot of the work. This is an example of a research style. The research community were perceived as having different requirements, so they have a different site design. So this would be a typical research institute design. I should say as well, we're getting more standardized now, even from the start of the project. The kind of policies have got stricter now in terms of customizing and changing things. Okay, just some feedback then. As I say, we used the feedback, so this is an example of the quotations we had. UCD Research were a high-profile group at the university, so having them on board from the outset certainly was a major plus in terms of helping us with the rollout. Okay, I'll move along because I'm running out of time, but the rollout model, this is, the rollout model we follow can be broken up into 3 main phases. So we have planning, where we got the local school to review their own customer requirements, content and inventory, and appoint a content team. One of the important things was that we got them to appoint a content coordinator or project coordinator. So we had one point of contact in each of the schools, which was very important and saves a lot of time and effort. Then we're into the phase 2, the design and build phase, review the all information architecture. You're all very familiar with that. Any customization then of page layout and designs, you have to agree those and integrate them. We would integrate then what we would call the site skeleton into the system for them, so they get their styles, templates, any images that they would give us, and some sample content. But we stay clear of actually migrating content in. We would train their administrators in on the content, on the site skeleton then that's in place, and get them to actually migrate the content into the system. And much like Locker, we kind of saw that as an opportunity for them to actually clean up their content and have a look at their site and see how it can be improved. So migration was done in that way. Then you're basically into the testing and setting up some workflows if they required. And then we were trying to give the final end users, the content contributors, full in-context training, so they get trained on the site that they're actually going to use. Didn't always work out like that. Sometimes the end users would get trained with the administrators and so on, but ideally that was the way we tried to operate it. In terms of a support team, we recruited 2 people into the team, and we went into production, as I mentioned. Technology development specialist and a customer support team member. They've been waving their hands there. I was the project manager. Most of the project management work was weighted towards the early stages of the project, and we were working closely with Laura and Raywin as well, who were doing the project management on the Terminalfour side. And we also increasingly draw on the people who've been supporting the Dreamweaver environment now, because the number of CMS sites grow, but then we can get them more involved in actual CMS implementations. But it's important to remember, we are supporting the 2 environments at the moment. We still have to help the people who are using Dreamweaver as well. And then the operations team, mainly just to really deal with them, mainly from the point of view of monitoring the cluster environment and stuff that we have the application hosted in. Just very quickly, some related dependent projects. I won't go through all of these now. Our research management system profiles application was mentioned earlier on. Basically, we take an output from that, we take it into Site Manager, apply the styles to it, the local styles, and publish it out fully as part of the school site. I have a couple of screenshots of that just to show you. We've integrated with our intranet environment, so users use the same auth environment to publish to the website as the intranet environment as well. It just appears as a different section in the hierarchy. We publish out content. We have a portal called UCD Connect, so we publish out content to the channels within our Luminous. It's a Luminous portal, so we do XML feeds and HTML snippets to that. Our events calendar is driven by Site Manager as well. I think that's the standard offering now from T4, but I think we were one of the first, if not the first, I think, to adopt that and work with Terminalfour on that. In terms of program information, we want to give that the same treatment as we've done for our profiles. That's a little bit further down the road, but basically we want to take our program information from our student information system, which is Banner, package it up within Site Manager and send it out to the school site, so it's fully part and fully integrated in the school sites. But that's at its very early stages at the moment. We have a Google search. We have 2 Google search appliances at UCD. So as part of a package, we do a local site search with the Google search alongside the CMS implementation, so they work nicely together. We have a number of bilingual websites, and we'll be under increasing pressure to do some multilingual sites as well now at the international office, and there's a big drive to get international students in as well. And accessibility, well, that always runs alongside CMS. It certainly would have helped us meet our obligations in this area and improve standards and so on as well. So sorry, I'll just run through that very quick, just to give you an idea that there's other systems and stuff that we've integrated with, and just give you an idea of the overall scope. So this is just the profiles. This is the profile here from the RMS system. This is our graduate business school, which those of you paying attention to is another style, another design that we've integrated in as well. Business schools, I think, are renowned for wanting to have a different looking sites and doing their own thing. So that's the profile integrated, and then this is the same profile integrated in with the undergraduate business school site as well. So that's all automated and published out fully as part of the school site. Just to finish up with some tips and hints, try and keep any restructuring and rebranding projects as separate. We were fortunate that the big restructuring that went on in UCD went on before the CMS project kicked off. So try can be very political and drag your project down. I'll just flick through these very quickly, just 2 more minutes. Include stakeholders at every stage of the process. Buy-in is essential. We included them right through the tender procedure, evaluating the initial tenders, presentation sessions, and some of the people here in T4 probably still bear the wounds from some of those. But the whole idea is try and make it their CMS and not yours, so don't feel that it's been imposed on them. Resources must be approved try and get the resources approved at the project initiation, and these days it'll be very hard to get resources approved in any event, but it's going to be hard to get them approved later on, and it'll also be hard to roll out the system sometimes if you're using already busy resources to do that. If possible, run training programs in-house. We run like a 2 or 3 hour end user training program, and it keeps us close to the customer requirements. And also it seems that's more than enough from our experiences to get people up and going. They don't have much difficulty from there on, maybe a little bit of hand holding, but nothing major. Try and keep designs as standardized as possible. All the economies of scale coming from keeping your designs. You certainly don't want to be integrating 10 or 15 different designs and customizing those. That'll really slow things down. Start with the easy wins, start with the people who are keen and they have the resources to actually deliver on the projects, and then certainly from our experience the kind of overall projects builds momentum from there. And that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful.